The stars above the Valoran frontier stretched endlessly, cold and silent. But aboard the Sarvan, tension filled the air like electricity. After days of flight, evading Dominion forces and recovering from battle, Commander Taraka Vey and Captain Eli Ward faced the ultimate challenge, the confrontation that would decide not just their fate, but the fate of an entire galaxy. Eli stood in the observation deck staring at a distant point of light. It was the fortress station of Kor Veln, a massive orbital citadel armed to the teeth and floating like a predator above a dead planet. "Is he expecting us?" Taraka asked, her voice low. Eli shook his head. "Not exactly. He knows we're coming, but he won't be ready for what we have planned." She studied him closely. 2 centuries had passed since his own people had slept in stasis, yet the fire in his eyes burned brighter than most soldiers she had seen. There was courage in him, not the loud, reckless kind that rushed into battle without thought, but the quiet, unwavering kind that made people follow him. Taraka felt that same fire stir within herself. For years, betrayal had hardened her. She trusted no one. But Eli had shown her that trust could be a weapon more powerful than any blaster or fleet. The Sarvan approached the station under cover of a nebula, their movements slow and deliberate. The crew worked in near-perfect silence, the tension almost unbearable. Every sensor was active, every weapon ready. Eli moved to the tactical console. "We can't fight them head-on. Their guns outmatch us. We need to think differently." Taraka nodded. "And what's your plan?" "Divide and confuse them," Eli said. "We'll use the station's own defenses against it. I've studied old Terran algorithms. They can guide our fire without exposing the ship." Karn, standing nearby, frowned. "You mean we're going to let them shoot at us?" "Only when it serves us," Eli replied calmly. "We're not running into them blindly. We're bending the fight to our advantage." Taraka studied him for a long moment, then made her decision. "Do it." The battle began silently. The Sarvan slipped through the nebula, invisible until it was too late. Small energy pulses shot out, creating false signatures. Fortress station systems misread them, firing upon phantom targets. Kor Veln's fleet scrambled to respond, but the confusion worked in the humans' favor. "Now," Eli shouted. The crew followed his instructions to the letter. They used the station's own rotating weapons, bouncing energy beams back, striking the enemy ships in unexpected angles. Explosions lit the void like fireworks, but the Sarvan remained unscathed. Taraka barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Divert shields. Redirect energy. Target the bridge cannons." The crew moved like a single organism, their fear replaced by adrenaline, precision, and trust. Every step was guided by Eli's calm voice and Taraka's unwavering command. Even Marin, who had doubted Eli, fought without hesitation. He had seen the humans' courage, and he believed now, like everyone else, that this was the only way to survive. The fight was brutal, but methodical. They destroyed the outer defense ships one by one. Fortress Station shuddered under repeated hits. Veln's crews were confused, disoriented, and unable to predict the next move. Finally, Taraka and Eli were ready for the last step. They had to reach the station's power core, the heart of its deadly weapon systems. If they could disable it, the station would become a sitting target and Kor Veln's reign of terror would end. Eli turned to Taraka. "This is risky. I'll have to go into the core. I can't bring anyone with me. If something goes wrong..." Taraka placed a clawed hand on his shoulder. "You're not doing this alone." He shook his head. "You stay with the ship. Lead the crew. That's what you do best." She frowned. "And you're the one who's going to risk everything." He smiled faintly. "That's what humans do. Step up when no one else will." The boarding pod detached from the Sarvan and shot toward the station. Eli's pulse raced, but his hands were steady. Inside the core chamber, enormous energy conduits hummed and pulsed with lethal power. The heat was unbearable, and every surface radiated danger. He worked quickly, setting the Terran override sequence. The panels lit up as energy flowed, redirecting the station's systems. For a moment it seemed too quiet. Then alarms blared. Someone had noticed the intrusion. Security drones swarmed toward him, but Eli was prepared. Using clever maneuvers and old Terran tech tricks, he disabled their circuits, turning their weapons against each other. Each step forward was calculated, precise, and fearless. Back on the Sarvan, Taraka's eyes scanned the readouts. "Core sequence?" she asked. Almost complete, Eli's voice crackled over the comm. Just a few more seconds, the station shook violently. Veln's fleet fired blindly, trying to stop him, but they couldn't predict his movements. Every system Eli touched responded as if obeying centuries of human ingenuity. Then, a massive explosion rocked the station. Energy flares shot into space. The outer hull buckled, core destroyed, Eli shouted, gasping. Tiraka felt a wave of relief wash over her. The threat was over. But suddenly the chamber began to collapse. Conduits exploded, sending sparks across the floor. Eli was trapped under a fallen beam. Eli! Tiraka screamed into the comm. I'm fine, he shouted, though his voice was strained. Go, lead the crew. Save them, you're stronger than you think. For a terrifying moment, Tiraka feared she had lost him. But he emerged, battered but alive, carrying the last piece of the core's control panel. When the smoke cleared, the station was a ruin. Veln's surviving ships had fled. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. One human and one alien commander had toppled the feared fortress station. The crew of the Saravan cheered, their faith in each other renewed. Even Marin nodded to Eli with quiet respect. Tiraka stepped beside him. You did it, she said, voice filled with awe. He smiled faintly, looking at the destroyed station. We did it. Together. For the first time in years, Tiraka felt something she had thought impossible. Hope. She had trusted no one. And yet, here she was, standing beside a human who had proven that loyalty, courage, and selflessness could survive even centuries. In the days that followed, word of the battle spread. Across the galaxy, species whispered about the human, the last son of Earth, who had faced impossible odds and won. Humanity was no longer a forgotten legend. It was a symbol of courage. Tiraka walked the deck, watching her crew. No one doubted her anymore, and they didn't doubt Eli. He had shown them what humans could be, brave, clever, and willing to risk everything for others. She turned to him. You've changed the galaxy, Captain. He shook his head. We all changed it. I just stepped up first, Tiraka studied him. You've earned my trust. And more than that, you've reminded me that hope is worth fighting for. He smiled faintly, looking at the stars. Then don't let it die. Weeks later, the Saravan entered a safe sector of uncharted space. Repairs were underway, the crew was healthy, and for the first time in a long time, peace seemed possible. Tiraka stood in the observation deck, staring at the endless stars. She thought of her past, the betrayals, the losses, the cold loneliness of never trusting anyone. And then she thought of Eli, the human who had changed everything. She realized that sometimes trust was not a weakness. Sometimes it was the greatest strength a being could possess. Eli joined her silently, looking out at the same stars. What now? He asked. She smiled. Now but we build. We gather the other Atlas survivors. We bring humanity back, and we make sure the galaxy knows what courage truly looks like. He nodded. And if the galaxy tries to stop us? We fight, Tiraka said firmly. Together. And for the first time in centuries, Commander Tiraka Vey felt free. She trusted not blindly but wisely. She trusted a human, and that trust had saved them all. The stars stretched endlessly before them, cold and silent. But in the hearts of the Saravan's crew, a fire burned bright. A fire lit by courage, loyalty, and humanity. And that fire would never go out. The stars outside the Saravan looked calm, but inside the ship, tension filled every corridor. The battle with Veln's fleet had left deep scars, both on the hull and in the hearts of the crew. Burn marks still glowed along the engine walls. Systems failed one after another, but the worst damage was something no repair tool could fix: fear. Commander Tiraka Vey stood on the bridge, her sharp eyes tracing the broken panels. Her crew moved carefully, whispering to each other, avoiding her gaze. They had survived only because of Eli Ward, the human they had once called a relic. But victory had a price. Every ship in the Zareth Dominion now knew that the Saravan carried a human, something ancient, powerful, and unpredictable. Tiraka looked toward Eli, who was working at the navigation console. His hands were steady, his focus calm, as if he didn't notice the wary eyes around him. He had become a strange light in the middle of the storm. You should rest, Tiraka said, breaking the silence. Eli smiled faintly. I will, after I fix this jump sequence. If we don't calibrate, we'll end up inside a sun. Her lips twitched in a half-smile. That would be unpleasant. For a moment, the tension eased, but the quiet didn't last. Lieutenant Marin, a tall Zareth with dark scales, stepped forward. "Commander," he said, "we cannot keep him here. Every power in the galaxy wants him. He is dangerous." Taraka turned her cold gaze on him. "Dangerous? He saved your life." Marin didn't flinch. "He is human. They destroyed themselves once. Who knows what he will bring now?" The crew muttered in agreement. Taraka felt the weight of their fear pressing down on her. She wanted to speak, to defend Eli again, but before she could, the ship's alarm blared. Incoming transmission. A holographic screen flickered to life. The emblem of the Zareth Dominion High Council appeared, followed by a stern-faced official. "Commander Vey," the voice said, cold and formal. "You are ordered to deliver the human known as Eli Ward to the nearest Dominion outpost. He is to be handed over immediately. Do not resist." The line cut without waiting for a reply. Silence followed, heavy and sharp. Taraka looked around. Every pair of eyes on the bridge waited for her answer. She took a slow breath. "No," she said softly. Marin's eyes widened. "Commander?" I said no. "We don't hand him over." A ripple of shock spread through the crew. "That's treason," someone whispered. Eli looked at her, surprise and gratitude mixing in his tired expression. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do," she replied. "They fear what they don't understand. I won't let them destroy you because of that." Before anyone could speak again, the ship jolted. Red lights flashed. Enemy ships approaching. Marin cursed under his breath. "They've already found us." On the screen, the scanners displayed 3 Dominion cruisers closing in fast. They had been waiting for this moment. "Eli," Taraka ordered, "get to engineering. We need that jump drive ready. We leave now." He nodded and ran while Taraka took her place in the captain's chair. Her crew hesitated. Some looked ready to obey, others ready to mutiny. She could see it in their eyes. The line between loyalty and fear was thin. "Shields up," she shouted. "Return fire!" Energy beams cut through the darkness. The Sarivon shook as explosions lit the black void. Eli reached the engineering bay, sweat running down his face as he worked to reroute power. Sparks burst around him. He didn't care about his safety. He only cared about getting the ship out alive. Suddenly the sound of boots echoed behind him. Marin stood at the doorway, blaster in hand. "Step away from the console," Marin ordered. Eli froze. "You're making a mistake." "The mistake was bringing you aboard," Marin said. "The commander has lost her judgment. You're controlling her somehow." Eli shook his head. "She's choosing what's right. You can't see that because you're afraid." "Afraid?" Marin's hand tightened on his weapon. "You humans bring chaos. I will not let history repeat." Before Marin could fire, Taraka's voice rang out from the comm system. "Marin, stand down." "That's an order." But Marin ignored her. Eli moved quickly, not to fight, but to disable the control pad beside him. The doors sealed, locking them both inside. "If you shoot me," Eli said calmly, "you'll never get this ship moving." Marin hesitated. The ship shook violently again and alarms screamed. One of the Dominion cruisers had locked onto them. Taraka shouted from the bridge, "Eli, we need that jump drive." Eli looked at Marin. "Help me, please, I can't save everyone alone." For a moment, something changed in the lieutenant's eyes. He lowered the weapon slowly and moved beside Eli. Together, they finished the calibration. On the bridge, Taraka waited. Her hands gripped the armrest, knuckles pale. "Now, Eli," she called. The stars stretched into blinding light as the ship leaped into hyperspace. When the world came back into focus, silence filled the room. No alarms, no chasing ships, only the hum of the engines. They had escaped. Taraka exhaled in relief. "Report," Eli's voice came over the comm. "We're stable. Drive holding at 87%. Marin helped." She blinked. "Marin?" Yes, he chose right. A smile, small but real, touched her face. "Good." Hours later, when the ship finally entered safe orbit around an uncharted moon, Taraka met Eli in the observation deck. The stars reflected in the wide glass window, cold and endless. "Why did you stop Marin?" she asked softly. Eli looked at the stars. "Because I don't believe anyone's too far gone to choose right. I've seen people change even in the darkest times." "You trust too easily," she said. "And you trust no one," he replied with a faint smile. Maybe that's why we balance each other out. For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching a new dawn rise over the moon below. The calm was strange, almost peaceful. Then Eli's expression changed. "Tiraka," he said quietly. "There's something I need to tell you." "I'm not from the past." She turned to him, confused. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "I was part of something called Project Atlas. It was an Earth plan to save our species before the solar wars ended. We sent people, soldiers, scientists into deep stasis pods hidden across the stars. I wasn't a survivor by chance. I was meant to wake up when the galaxy was ready." Tiraka's mind spun. Ready for what? Eli's gaze hardened. "To bring humanity back." The words hit her like a shockwave. Humanity wasn't gone, they were sleeping, waiting. Before she could respond, the ship's sensors beeped again. An encrypted message appeared on the screen, sent from deep space. The sender's code was old, ancient. Eli stared at it, his voice barely a whisper. "It's from another Atlas pod." The room fell silent. Outside, the stars glittered like 1,000 waiting eyes. Tiraka stepped closer to him. "What are you going to do?" He looked at her, his voice steady. "Find them. But I can't do it alone." She held his gaze. There was no fear there now, only determination. "Then you won't." The light from the stars fell across their faces. 2 figures standing against the endless dark. Tiraka Vey, who once trusted no one, and Eli Ward, the last son of Earth. Together they would face what was coming next. The stars outside the Saravan shimmered like frozen sparks as the ship drifted quietly through the aftermath of battle. The scars of combat still burned across her hull, long black marks from plasma hits, melted armor plates, and broken antennae. But despite the damage, she was alive. So was her crew. And somewhere deep inside the engineering bay, so was the man who had made their survival possible. Captain Eli Ward, the last human. Commander Tiraka Vey stood on the upper walkway, watching the engineers work. Sparks flashed as they repaired the shattered engine casings. The smell of burned metal hung in the air. Her mind kept replaying the battle, the moment she had listened to Eli's voice, followed his plan, and somehow survived against impossible odds. It had been a long time since she had followed anyone's advice. Longer still since she had believed in anyone's word. "Commander," said Karn, her second officer, climbing up beside her. "Repairs are underway. But the damage is worse than we thought. The reactor's cooling grid is unstable. If it fails, we lose power completely." Tiraka nodded. "And Veln?" "No sign of him yet. His fleet retreated, but we're picking up faint transmissions. He's regrouping," she sighed. "He won't stop until he gets what he came for." Karn glanced toward the human below. "Maybe we should just hand him over." Tiraka turned sharply. "You would surrender an ally to save your own skin?" "Ally," Karn said bitterly. "He's not one of us. He's from a dead world, and wherever humans go, destruction follows." Tiraka's eyes hardened. "We survived because of him. Don't forget that." Karn lowered his gaze but said nothing more. Eli was kneeling beside a power conduit, sleeves rolled up, tools spread around him. Sweat covered his face, but he worked with quiet focus. His movements were precise, confident. When he looked up and saw Tiraka watching, he smiled faintly. "You're the kind of commander who checks on her crew herself," he said. "That's rare." "Trust is earned," she replied. "Then maybe I'm earning it," he said lightly, tightening a bolt. Tiraka leaned against the railing. "You shouldn't be working." "You're still recovering," he chuckled. "After what I've seen, this is relaxing." She studied him. "You fought in the solar wars, didn't you?" Eli nodded slowly. "Yeah. I was just an engineer, but in those days everyone fought. It wasn't just soldiers, it was builders, teachers, families. Everyone did what they could." He paused, eyes distant. "When the sky burned over Earth, I thought it was the end. But we kept fighting anyway. Because humans, we don't know how to give up." Tiraka didn't reply. His words echoed something deep inside her, a memory of her own people standing their ground when others fled. After a moment, Eli looked up again. "You know, Commander, your people remind me of mine." Her brow furrowed. "How so?" "You keep moving forward, even when the universe tries to crush you." For a moment, silence filled the bay, broken only by the soft hum of machines. Then the ship trembled. "Warning, enemy ships approaching," came the voice of Luro through the intercom. "They found us again." Tiraka spun toward the exit. "All crew to battle stations." The Sarevon jolted as energy blast struck its shields. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Multiple ships incoming, 12 signatures, Luro shouted. They've blocked our path. Return fire, Tiraka ordered, but their shots were weaker this time. The power grid was unstable. The weapons were losing charge. Karn turned to her. Commander, if they hit the reactor, we'll lose everything. Tiraka's claws dug into the armrest. She was outnumbered again, outgunned again. For a moment, the old fear, the fear of betrayal, of failure, crept back into her heart. Then Eli entered the bridge. Your systems are overheating, he said quickly. You can't win by brute force. You need to outthink them. Tiraka shot him a sharp look. We've already tried that. Not like this, he said. I have an idea, but you'll have to trust me. There it was again, that word. Trust. She hesitated. The crew looked at her, waiting for an order. Finally, she said, Explain. Eli pointed at the star map. Those asteroids we passed earlier, they're dense with iron. If we overload the plasma drives and vent them into the debris field, we can create a false energy signature. They'll think we've exploded, Karn frowned. That's insane. If you mistime the detonation, the ship will tear apart. Eli looked directly at Tiraka. I can time it, but I need access to the reactor core. Tiraka's gaze locked on his. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then she nodded. Do it. Minutes later, Eli stood in the reactor chamber, surrounded by humming energy lines and glowing blue light. The heat was intense. His hands moved quickly across the control panels, setting the sequence. Tiraka's voice came through the comm. We're ready on our end. Copy that, Eli replied. On my mark, vent the drives and cut main power. We'll drift dark. He watched the readings climb. 100%, 110, 120. The entire ship began to shake. Now, he shouted. A flash of blinding light burst from the Sarevon's engines, spreading through the asteroid field like a miniature star. From a distance, it looked like an explosion. On the enemy scanners, the Sarevon vanished. Inside the ship, everything went dark. Only emergency lights flickered faintly. Luro whispered, Power down. Complete. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, through the static of the scanners, the enemy ships began to move away. They're leaving, Karn said in disbelief. They think we're destroyed. Tiraka allowed herself a small smile. It worked. When the engines came back online and light filled the bridge again, Eli walked in, covered in sweat and soot. Remind me, he said, breathing hard, to never do that again. Luro laughed nervously. You're insane. Probably, Eli said, smiling. Even Tiraka found herself laughing softly, a sound that felt strange after so many dark days. Later, when the ship was safe and quiet again, Tiraka found Eli sitting alone in the observation lounge. The stars reflected in his eyes like silver fire. She approached slowly. You took a big risk today, he shrugged. Wasn't the first time? You could have died, yeah, but so could all of you. If there's one thing I learned back home, it's that sometimes the only way to win is to risk everything. She sat across from him. For the first time, she didn't keep her guard up. Why, she asked. Why help strangers? Why fight for us? Eli looked out the window. Because someone once did the same for me. A commander who could have left me behind but didn't. Tiraka understood what he meant. Slowly, she said, Maybe you're right about trust. Maybe it's not weakness after all. He smiled faintly. It's the hardest strength to keep. The next day, the Sarevon reached a small nebula where they could rest and make repairs. The crew's mood had changed. Fear had been replaced with admiration. The whispers about the human were no longer fearful. They were grateful. Karn approached Tiraka quietly. Commander, I may have been wrong about him, Tiraka nodded. We all were. As she looked across the deck and saw Eli teaching the young mechanics how to stabilize the plasma lines, she felt something unfamiliar, hope. He was not from her world, not even from her time. Yet somehow he had brought life back to her ship. That night, Tiraka stood again at the viewport watching the distant stars. She remembered the faces of those she had lost, the friends, the soldiers, the betrayals, and for the first time those memories didn't feel like chains. Behind her, Eli approached quietly. You ever wonder what's out there? He asked. Always, she said. But I stopped expecting good things long ago. He smiled. Then maybe it's time to start again. She looked at him, this strange, fearless human who had appeared from the past like a spark in the dark. For the first time since the Valoran betrayal, Commander Taraka Vey felt something new stirring in her heart, something she thought she'd lost forever. Trust. And as the Sarevon floated peacefully among the stars, two souls, one alien, one human, shared a silent understanding. The fire that had once burned in humanity still burned bright, and it was catching light in her too. The hum of the Sarevon's engines echoed softly through the metal corridors. The ship glided silently through the dark space of the Valoran frontier, carrying with it a secret that no one on board truly understood: a living human. Commander Taraka Vey walked through the hallways with her usual firm stride. Her people stepped aside as she passed, whispering in low tones. The rumor had already spread across the ship. The ancient species, the DEATHWORLDers, were not extinct after all. Taraka ignored the murmurs. She had more important things to think about. In the medical bay, Captain Eli Ward sat on the edge of his bed, studying a holographic projection of the galaxy. His expression was calm, but behind his eyes there was a sadness that no rest could fix. 2 centuries had passed since he last saw his homeworld. Everything and everyone he had known were long gone. When Taraka entered, he looked up and smiled faintly. "Commander, you look like someone who hasn't slept in days." "I don't have the luxury," she replied. Eli nodded. "I suppose captains never do." She studied him for a moment. The medics had removed his old Terran suit and given him standard Dominion clothing. He looked ordinary enough. Short dark hair, steady gray eyes, and a calm presence that felt out of place in the tense air of the ship. Yet there was something different about him. Something unshaken, Taraka said quietly. "My officers are worried about you." "Because I'm human?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because you are unknown," she answered simply. "And unknown things tend to cause fear." Eli gave a small chuckle. "Fear's universal. It's what kept my kind alive as long as we were." She folded her arms. "Alive? You mean until you destroyed yourselves in the solar wars?" His expression darkened slightly. "That's one way to tell it. Another way is that we fought to survive when no one else would stand with us." There was no anger in his tone, only a quiet conviction. It made Taraka pause. He looked at her carefully. "You've seen betrayal. I can see it in your eyes. Maybe you don't trust anyone anymore. But I promise you this, whatever you think of humans, I'm not your enemy." Taraka didn't answer. She didn't believe in promises. Later that cycle, alarms blared across the Sarevon. Red lights flashed through the corridors, and the intercom crackled with Luro's voice. "Commander, we have multiple ships approaching. Unidentified signatures." "They're fast!" Taraka ran to the bridge, her long coat sweeping behind her. "Show me." On the central screen, 6 ships appeared, sleek, black, and armed. Their transponders showed no allegiance. "Pirates," Karn said grimly. "The Corveln fleet." At the mention of that name, Eli, who had followed quietly onto the bridge, froze. "Corveln?" he said. "He's still alive?" Taraka turned to him sharply. "You know him?" Eli nodded slowly. "He's a warlord. His people raided old Terran worlds after the wars. He was hunting me before I went into stasis." Taraka's expression hardened. "Then he's come to finish what he started." The enemy ships began to spread out, surrounding the Sarevon. The crew moved fast, shields up, weapons ready, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. "Commander, they're hailing us," Luro said. On screen. The face that appeared was scarred and cruel. Corveln's eyes gleamed with greed as he smiled. "Commander Taraka Vey, I hear you found something. Valuable, a human, yes?" Taraka said nothing. "I'll make it simple," Veln continued. "Hand him over and I'll let your ship go." Eli stepped forward before Taraka could respond. "You'll have to take me yourself," Veln laughed. Still defiant even after centuries. Humans never learn. The screen went dark. Seconds later, enemy fire shook the Sarevon. "Shields down to 60%, shouted Karn. "Return fire," Taraka ordered. "All batteries target the lead cruiser." The ship trembled under the strain. The crew fought bravely, but the pirates had more guns, more ships, and no mercy. Eli moved closer to the tactical console. "You're fighting them head-on." "You'll lose," Taraka glared. "Do you have a better idea, Captain?" He pointed to the asteroid field ahead. "There, use it. That field will tear our hull apart." "Not if you fly like you mean it," Eli said, voice steady. "Trust me," 2 words she didn't like, "trust me." But something in his tone made her hesitate. Karn protested. "Commander, that's suicide." Taraka looked between her crew, the enemy fleet, and the human who stood calm amid chaos. Then she made her choice. Helm. Set course for the asteroid field. Full speed. The Saravan plunged into the dense cluster of rocks. Massive stones drifted slowly through the void, colliding and breaking apart. The ship's shield sparked as fragments scraped its sides. "Evasive pattern Delta," Taraka shouted. The crew obeyed, weaving through narrow gaps. Enemy ships followed, firing wildly. One pirate cruiser struck an asteroid head-on and exploded in a silent flash. Eli moved quickly to the secondary controls. "Reroute your targeting to manual. The asteroids can reflect energy blasts. Use them." Luro blinked. "Reflect them?" "Watch." Eli adjusted the targeting, fired a short burst at a large rock. The blast bounced off its surface, hitting a pirate ship squarely in the hull. The bridge erupted in cheers. "Impossible," Karn muttered. Eli smiled. "Just physics." Taraka gave him a sharp glance, half disbelief, half admiration. "You're not just a soldier, are you?" "I was an engineer before the wars," he said simply. "I fix things." Together they used every trick, bouncing shots, drawing enemy ships into collisions, even faking damage to lure them closer. The Saravan fought like a cornered beast, and under Eli's guidance, the impossible began to happen. One by one, Veln's ships fell behind, their formation breaking apart. When the last pirate ship retreated into the darkness, the bridge filled with the sound of relief, shaky breaths, quiet laughter. "Status?" Taraka asked. "Shields at 30%, Luro said. "Engines stable." "We made it." Eli leaned against the console, breathing hard. "Told you. You just needed a little Terran thinking." Taraka's gaze lingered on him. There was no pride in his voice, only calm confidence. She had met many who called themselves brave, but courage like his was something different. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, solid, real. Later, in the observation deck, Taraka found him staring out at the stars. The light reflected off his face, making him look almost like a ghost from another time. "You could have stayed hidden," she said softly. "You didn't have to help." He turned to her. "You saved me. I wasn't going to let your crew die for it." "That's unusual," she said. "Most people only protect themselves." He shrugged. "Maybe that's why humans didn't last. We cared too much about others." She studied him in silence. "Why did Veln hunt you? What could you have that he wants so badly?" Eli hesitated, then said quietly, "Knowledge. Old human tech. We built things no one else understood. And some of those things shouldn't fall into the wrong hands. Like weapons? Like hope," he said. His words confused her, but they also stayed with her. Hope wasn't a weapon, she understood. The next morning, the crew began repairs. Many of them looked at Eli differently now. Some with curiosity, some with quiet respect. He worked beside them, fixing panels, rewiring systems, teaching them methods forgotten for centuries. When a young mechanic thanked him, Eli only smiled and said, "Just doing my part." Taraka watched from the upper deck. The crew that once feared him now followed his lead without question. And for the first time in years, she saw something she had thought was gone. Unity. Maybe she thought humans weren't monsters from old stories. Maybe they were something more. That night, as she sat in her private quarters, her thoughts drifted again to the human's calm eyes and quiet courage. She still didn't trust him, but she couldn't deny what he had done. He had turned fear into strength. He had given her crew something she couldn't. He had made them believe again. And deep inside, though she would never admit it aloud, Commander Taraka Vey began to believe a little too. The void of space stretched endlessly beyond the windows of the Zareth Dominion warship, the Saravan. Stars blinked like cold eyes, each one distant and uncaring. Commander Taraka Vey stood on the bridge, staring out at the endless black. Her reflection in the glass looked tired. Silver scales dulled, her eyes colder than they once were. Once she had trusted easily. Once she had believed in the Dominion's unity. But that was before the Valoran betrayal, when her own allies turned their guns on her fleet for political gain. The scars of that battle still haunted her dreams. Hundreds of her crew had died, and those who survived followed her now. Not because they trusted her leadership, but because they had nowhere else to go. The galaxy had become a web of hidden knives. Every smile could hide a threat. Every promise could lead to an ambush. Taraka had learned the hard way that trust was the most dangerous weapon of all. Now all she trusted was herself. The soft hum of the ship's systems filled the silence. Then the communication officer, a young Zareth named Luro, turned sharply from his console. "Commander, we're receiving a signal," he said. Weak but repeating. Taraka didn't look away from the window. "Another trap, most likely." "Ignore it." Luro hesitated. "The frequency is strange. It's old. The encryption code doesn't match any current standard. It almost looks Terran." That made Taraka turn. "Terran?" she repeated, her voice quiet but sharp. "Yes, Commander. Human code." The bridge grew tense. The word human carried a weight few dared to speak aloud. According to the histories, humans had vanished centuries ago after the solar wars. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others said they left the galaxy behind. Whatever the truth, no one had seen a living human in over 200 years. Taraka walked slowly toward the main console. The signal flickered across the screen. 3 short pulses, 1 long. Then again, it was indeed an old Terran emergency pattern. "Location?" she asked. Luro adjusted the scanners. "Near the edge of the Veloran frontier. About 20,000 kilometers from our current path." Her second officer, Karn, stepped forward. He was taller, heavier, and always suspicious. "Commander, it's not worth the risk. Probably pirates using old codes to lure in prey." "They did it on NetherPrime last month." Taraka nodded slightly. "Yes, that's what I thought." But she didn't give the order to move away. Something about that signal. It was too consistent, too steady. Traps were never that disciplined. She stood in silence for a moment, listening to the faint beeps echo through the bridge. Finally, she said, "Change course. Bring us in slowly. Full sensor sweep. If it's a trap, we'll see it before they see us." Karn frowned but obeyed. "Aye, Commander." The Cerevan turned, engines rumbling as it approached the signal's origin. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, checking scanners, charging shields, ready for anything. Taraka stayed still, watching the darkness beyond the viewports. Minutes passed. Then Luro spoke again, his voice filled with disbelief. "Commander, we found it." On the screen appeared a single escape pod, small and old, drifting helplessly. Its hull bore marks of heat and damage. Faded letters along the sides spelled a word no one aboard had ever seen before. UNE. Taraka narrowed her eyes. "United Nations of Earth," she whispered, recalling the ancient name from forgotten records. Karn looked uneasy. "That pod shouldn't even exist." "Yet it does," Taraka said softly. "Life signs?" "1," Luro replied. Weak but present, the bridge fell silent. Everyone waited for her command. After a long pause, Taraka said, "Bring it aboard. Secure it in the quarantine bay, and keep weapons ready." The docking bay hissed with pressure as the pod was brought in. Engineers in protective suits surrounded it, their scanners flickering. Taraka stood at the edge, her expression unreadable. The pod's hatch was scorched, but the symbols on it were clear, ancient human script, warning of stasis systems and emergency releases. The chief engineer, Mirren, approached her. "Commander, internal systems are still functioning. Someone's been in cryosleep for a long time, maybe centuries. Can we open it safely?" Taraka asked. "Yes, but we don't know what condition the occupant will be in." "Do it," she ordered. With a hiss of escaping vapor, the hatch slowly opened. A cloud of cold air poured out, carrying the faint scent of metal and something ancient. Inside lay a figure in a dark survival suit, ice crystals covering his helmet. Then, he moved. A faint breath fogged the inside of the visor. The crew gasped. "Alive," Mirren whispered. Taraka stepped closer. Through the frost, she saw the shape of a human face. Pale skin, dark hair, the lines of exhaustion written deep. His body was frail, but there was strength in the way he gripped the edge of the pod. When they lifted him out, his eyes flickered open. They were gray, sharp and clear despite the centuries of sleep. He looked around, confused but alert. His voice, hoarse and dry, managed only a few words. "Where am I?" Taraka answered evenly. "You're aboard the Zareth ship Saravan in Dominion space." He frowned. "Dominion?" He seemed to search his memory. "What year is it?" "Year 8142, Galactic Standard," she said. For a long moment, he was silent. Then he gave a soft laugh, half disbelief, half sorrow. "Guess I overslept." Even Taraka, hardened as she was, almost smiled. "Almost." She gestured to the guards. "Take him to medical. Keep him under watch." Hours later, Taraka entered the med bay. The human was sitting upright now, his chest wrapped in sensors, a nutrient drip at his arm. He looked stronger, more alert. When he saw her, he gave a small nod. "You're the commander, I take it?" "Yes," she said. "Commander Tiraka Vey of the Sarevon? And you?" "Captain Eli Ward," he replied. United Earth Navy. The name meant nothing to her. "There is no United Earth now. Your world is gone." He looked down for a moment as if mourning something he had already lost long ago. Then he said quietly, "I figured as much." "How long?" 217 years, approximately." He let out a slow breath. "That's a long nap." Tiraka folded her arms. "Why were you in stasis? What were you running from?" His gaze hardened slightly. "Not running, escaping. The solar wars were ending. We made mistakes. I was part of an evacuation fleet. My ship was destroyed. I barely made it out." Her voice remained cold. "And you expect me to believe this story?" He met her eyes directly. "I don't expect anything. You don't trust easily, I can see that. But I'm not lying." Something about his tone, steady, calm, without fear, unsettled her. Most prisoners begged, lied, or flattered. He did none of that. After a moment, she said, "We'll see." As she turned to leave, he called out, "Commander?" She stopped. "Thank you for not leaving me out there." She didn't reply, but after she left, her thoughts refused to quiet. Back on the bridge, Karn approached her again. "Commander, are you sure it's wise to keep him aboard? A human could be dangerous." "Everything in this galaxy is dangerous," she said. "We'll watch him, learn what he knows. But what if others come looking for him?" Tiraka looked out into the stars. "Then we'll deal with them when they do." She didn't say it aloud, but deep inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. Who was this man who spoke with such calmness after centuries alone? How had he survived when the rest of his kind had vanished? And why did his presence make her doubt her own certainty about trust? The stars beyond seemed to whisper, ancient and endless. Somewhere, in that darkness, the next chapter of her life and perhaps the galaxy's was waiting. And for the first time in years, Commander Tiraka Vey wondered if trust might not be weakness after all.